So in 2014, you started posting really good results, and maybe 2015 was your breakout year. Tell me about that. What were you just more dedicated?
I've always been an athlete my whole life, and I've always done fairly well at whatever sport I've played. I got a very good scholarship for tennis. Did very well at that in college, and then as soon as I began doing triathlons, I was almost always on the podium from the time I started doing those. And then kind of the same with cycling. When I started racing mountain bikes in 2013, I started as a Cat 3, and by the end of that year, I had won enough races that I was able to cat up to a 1. So I got catted up to the elite level fairly quickly, and raced, a couple seasons at the Cat 1 level. And then I remember, I think it was my first season of doing cyclocross, the 2014 season of cyclocross, where, I had a decent season, but I couldn't figure out, I felt kind of stuck. And same with mountain biking. I just kind of felt like my progress had slowed down, and I wasn't sure where to go from there. I was a strong technical rider, but what I had heard from most people was that I was lacking the power side of it. So it was at that point, after the 2014-15 cross season, going into mountain bike season, that spring was when I decided I needed more help. I needed a coach. And so 2015, I decided to hire a coach and a personal trainer.
Who was your coach?
So it was, his name was Joe Collins, and I knew him because he coached a few cyclists that I rode with, and he also worked at the shop that I raced for, but really had a strong background in dirt. He didn't really coach a lot of road racers. He really had a passion for mountain biking and cyclocross, and spent a lot of time living in North Carolina, which is where I love to ride. And so I just felt like he would be a good fit for the type of racing I wanted to do.
When did you first hear from USADA in 2016?
I first heard from them, I actually contacted them initially because I was going through a very messy breakup. And during this breakup, my ex had threatened to call them and accuse me of taking banned substances. So I contacted them first. I sent them an email explaining what was going on and what was possibly going to happen and what should I do, what would be the next step. And a few days went by, and I finally got a response that said, we will have to consult our legal team with this because we've never really had this kind of email before. And I never heard back from them in regards to what I had sent. And it was probably the following week, it was the week after my breakup, when I had moved out and was out on my own, I received a call from them saying that they wanted to speak to me. And when I called them back, I was probably on the phone with them for a couple of hours that first time. And what they had told me that conversation was that my ex had reported himself for taking banned substances, and their questions were more pertaining to his use of those substances. So, they weren't really questioning me about anything. It was more questioning what my knowledge was of his use. So that was the first I'd spoken with them in November of 2016. And it wasn't until January of 2017 that I found out that I was being investigated for taking those substances, and it was my knowledge at that time that I wasn't supposed to race any USA Cycling sanctioned races while I was being investigated.
Did you know he was using banned substances?
I did. Yeah. That started in early 2014, but when he first told me about them, it really didn't strike me as that big of a deal because they were prescribed by a doctor and they were for reasons completely unrelated to athletics. They were for personal reasons. At least that's what he told me. So, and he hasn't raced in many years, and so there would be no reason for him to be taking them as performance-enhancing drugs.
Jeff was also, at some point, he became your coach.
Yes, that was back actually when we first started dating. He had been mountain biking for a while, and so he had suggested, because I had kind of caught on to it pretty quickly, and so he had offered to kind of coach me and sort of, help me get stronger. But he owned a business and he didn't have a lot of time, and it just became, and I was looking for a lot of structure. I wanted workout plans laid out day by day, weeks in advance, feedback, and he just wasn't able to do that. So he was even the one that said, I think, I've taken you as far as you can get. I think at this point it would be better for you to hire a coach, a different coach that is just going to do that.
When did the breakup happen?
It was November of 2016. And, I believe some of the story was posted for the world to read. It was a very messy situation. It was a very difficult thing to go through. It was a very hard relationship to leave, and I had initially tried to end the relationship in October, but there were a lot of circumstances that made me feel like I was not able to leave safely, and I ended up staying in the house another month before I finally got out, November 12th of 2016.
When you found out that basically you were handed down this ruling based on text and you'd never tested positive, how did you feel?
I felt very let down and devastated, of course, as anybody would be. I just felt like no one ever really cared about my side of the story. From day one, I never felt like my story was truly being heard. I felt like this was very skewed one way from the beginning.
Did you really think he would go that far?
I really hoped not, and that's kind of one of the reasons that kept me in the house is, I felt like when I initially said that I wasn't happy and that I wanted to leave, and I got that first kind of catastrophic reaction over the news, I kind of felt like, well, maybe this is just an overreaction, and if I just give him some time, that things will settle down and he'll realize that all I'm wanting to do is just leave and be happy. I'm not out to hurt him. I'm not out to, and I understand that, it's certainly sad when breakups happen. I mean, everybody's been through a messy breakup, and it's a difficult thing to go through, but I felt like there would surely be a point where he would understand that he had to he had to let me go if it's what I wanted. And I kept waiting and waiting, and nothing changed. You know, it was just this ultimatum, you know, stay in this house or I'm going to do this. And, you know, it just finally got to a point where I had to make a decision to just accept whatever consequences came with leaving, or just stay there out of fear. And so, you know, I finally made a decision.
You talked about you felt bullied by USADA. What, I mean, so they have a 2-hour conversation with you and they don't bring you up at all.
Right.
What did they say they were investigating at that point?
So the way we ended that first conversation, if I can remember, because it's now been a year ago, was just they asked a lot of questions, just anything and everything pertaining to the substances that Jeff had. And I mean, it was everything from what color was this? What did the bottle look like? What did, you know, just all kinds of specific questions, and just a detailed timeline of his use of them. And I answered everything as best I could. And at the end of that conversation, I believe they asked me one time, did you ever take any of these? To which I answered no. And that was the end of it. And so that's kind of how the phone call ended. It was just, did you ever take these? No. But the entire phone call was just asking all of the specifics about his use of the substances. So it was just at the phone calls that came after that. And what I found out later was that I had left the house. I had gotten out of the relationship and the house on a Saturday night. And I found out only recently that it was just that Monday morning that he had called USADA and reported me for taking those substances. And they, being USADA, didn't respond to his email right away, and then he had turned and sent a second email the next day saying that this is very urgent. I need to speak to you guys right away. So the timeline, you know, it was just a day and a half after the breakup, he had sent them an email accusing me of this. And then there was another incident in December where I had to call the police for an incident by my home. And it was that evening that the text messages were sent to them. And he had also sent those text messages to many of my friends and peers as well. What scared me was that several times after I would talk on the phone with them through the investigation process, I would then get text messages from my ex reciting a lot of the things that I had told them on the phone, which, you know, in the situation that I was in made me very afraid because I never knew what was going to happen, you know, I never knew. And when I start getting text messages reciting things that I had just said on the phone, it kind of made me wonder what is getting shared back and forth between USADA and my ex. I don't know. And that just kind of blew my mind, you know. I'm sitting here telling someone I don't feel safe right now, and there's things that are unresolved. I didn't have my personal property back yet. You know, I was living in my apartment for several months with none of my belongings. You know, I didn't get any of it back. I was sleeping on the floor. I had no furniture. I mean, it was a very crazy situation. And so to have to deal with that on top of it, you know, it was just frustrating to feel like I wasn't really a priority. My safety was not a priority.
What did you think? I mean, you'd never tested positive, and a 4-year ban based on text messages.
Right.
I was honestly very surprised by the outcome. You know, I was the one that requested this hearing because I felt like it was a chance for a more fair, to have an arbitrator or some mediator between USADA and myself. I felt like it was a chance to have a more fair presentation of my side. And I just felt like the evidence that the verdict was based on was just not substantial. It was documented in the decision letter that my ex was not a credible witness, yet he's the one saying that I typed these messages. I passed my drug test, and my case was based on some text messages, and a 4-year ban, in my opinion, seemed pretty severe. I don't want you to think that I don't agree with what USADA stands for. Absolutely, their goal to keep sports clean, it is an important mission. I'm on board with that completely. What I didn't agree with was almost everything about the way this investigation happened and how the methods that were used, and even the system of arbitration. We had this hearing, and there was one arbitrator, one person who made this decision. But I felt bullied, and I never felt like there was a neutral stance during the investigation. I kind of just felt targeted from the beginning, despite the fact that I was the one that first asked for help. I was willing to do whatever it took initially to clear my name of this. That's why I sought them out, thinking that, they would help. And I just never felt like, anything was ever done to kind of make my side of it known.
Knowing that all this is going on and your phone's blowing up and everybody in the cycling community that you'd embrace so much knows about it, how does that make you feel?
Heartbroken, and as I said before, devastated. Now, many of the people in the cycling community have become good friends of mine, and they know me very well. So obviously I got a lot of support from those people saying, we believe you, we're on your side, or even just hold your head up, like it's okay, just a lot of supportive messages. But I also am very aware that, the cycling community here is very tight-knit, and I am now in this place where I was once very respected, and now I know there's people out there saying what if, or making awful assumptions about me. Well, she stood there and mentored kids and was taking drugs, or she only won this race because she was on drugs. It's just this feeling of all of those hours that I spent training and at the gym and just eating and sleeping and breathing cycling were just kind of, they're tainted now. Everyone thinks that every time I've been on the podium, it's because I was taking something.
So do you think Miller accomplished what he wanted to?
Yeah, I think so. I just thought it would, I didn't think he would get away with it, to be honest. I didn't think anybody could get away with doing something so cruel to somebody that they loved. I was pretty blown away that this is my life. You know, all of it just seems like something that you see in a movie. It doesn't seem like something that could actually happen in real life.
So what's next?
You know, I still love to be on the bike. That's not going to change. I'll still go to the gym, you know, put in the work, and, you know, one day this band won't be there, so there's no reason to give it up. But it's definitely a little tough right now to find a love for it. What they did not put in there was that I actually did submit to a DNA sample. When they first asked me about it in April, we have an entire email exchange of where Victor said, I would like to take a DNA sample. And I said, yes, I will give you a DNA sample. We scheduled a time, a date. I came here and waited for them. They never came. And he's coached multiple national champions other than myself, and has been coaching for years. And even he said, my progress, it's not like this happened overnight or even in a matter of weeks. It was months and months and months of gradual progress. And he said in the hearing that my rate of improvement was completely normal. She kind of explained her own story with their breakup, which had a lot of similar things that happened with mine. There was stalking, there was falsifying of text messages, not just to her, but to other people as well, other friends, and just very erratic behaviors. And the police were called with her breakup as well.